bring Eva to the stage, please. I'll just turn these banners off. Okay, yeah. So
hello, Eva.
Hello.
Eva. So
It's
Eva is
to be here.
thank you for coming. Eva is the principal product security engineer at the Auth product unit of Okta. And today she's going to talk to us about lessons learned from helping scale a product security program from startup to acquisition. So Eva, over to you.
Thank you. So hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. And in the next 30 minutes, I'll share what I learned from being part of a product security team from a startup to an acquisition. A few more details for me. As said, I'm a principal product security engineer at Auth0. Auth0 is a product unit of Okta. I joined Auth0 back in 2018. Back then, the company had roughly 400 employees, and the product security team was doing small steps. Fast forward last year, Auth0 was acquired by Okta, and at that point, Auth0 had roughly 1,000 employees and a mature product security program. So this talks about those 4 years in the journey and what I learned through that journey. On my free time, I do dance classes, ballet and contemporary. I play the piano, the clarinet. I love outdoor activities, and this is my dog Trufa, which I also love spending time with. Sort of a disclaimer what this talk is about and what I'll cover and what not. This is about my observations and the things that I learned through that journey of Auth0 from a startup to a mid-sized company and myself being part of the product security team. This talk is not about how Auth0 product security program or team look like, what decisions we took, and so on. And to that regard, the rest of the talk will be about a fictional product security team and the different stages that go. For example, a small team, short staff, laying the foundations, how you mature, and how we scale. And with that, let's say that there is a company and you get hired as one of the first 2 product security engineers, and the new product security team is formed. One question you may have is where to start? And in 2 big buckets, we can split it into, should I focus on the security of the new features, or should I focus on the security of the existing product? If you were to focus on the first one, on the security of the new features, you will successfully start applying the shift left approach. You can start having design reviews, security reviews during the design, and this will be effective in stopping vulnerabilities from entering the code in new product features. But if you were to only focus on this one, any undiscovered vulnerabilities in the existing product would still remain, and this would pose a significant security risk. Now, if we are to go on the other side, let's say we're focusing only on the security of the existing product. Here, yes, we will uncover vulnerabilities, and based on that, we will be able to assess what is the risk that we have and plan mitigating it. But we will suffer the same thing on the new features. If we do nothing for the new features, we will have vulnerabilities introduced there. Of course, it's not a one or the other. There is a balance. But my suggestion is during the very early stages, at least for the first couple of quarters, you need to give some attention to the existing product so that we have a baseline on what is your security posture up to that moment. And at the same point, you will start rolling out processes and tools to help on the security by design journey. On the topic on security of the existing product, when you first join a company, you may not know the product, and asking the question where the bodies are buried, where the security bugs are hidden, it may be a difficult or challenging task. My suggestion is ask engineers. The engineers who develop the product, who develop the features, know when they took a shortcut, know when they did things not perfectly. When they did it, they didn't know the impact of it, but if you ask them, I'm pretty sure they can point you to some pretty interesting directions. If you want to make it a bit of a more fun activity, collaborate with your engineering peers and conduct some engineering-wide bug hunting days. So engineering teams and security teams group together to hunt some security bugs. And the third one is, it's possible that the company you're joining already had done a third-party pen test. But my suggestion is have another one at that point that you're forming the product security team and you're starting to roll out a program, because this will give you a baseline of the existing posture. You will know how the product looks like from the external vulnerability surface. This is for the existing product, but we said we also need to do some work on the new features. And a question we will always ask, whether it's in this very early stage or further down the road, is how we prioritize how we work on assessing, on consulting on those new features. What I've seen that works really well is a risk assessment questionnaire. A risk assessment questionnaire is a list of questions that engineering teams need to fill during the start of their design. And it's a list of questions that help determine risk. Some examples are, does the feature you're building change how authentication authorization work? Are you going to do some sort of encryption? Do you handle secret, sensitive data or personal data, and so on? And try that the answers in those questions have a yes and a no. And the reason is we want, based on the answers, to quantify the risk. And this is where you would need to create a risk scoring algorithm. Now, in the beginning, the risk scoring algorithm will not be perfect. And the reason is when you create it, you don't have past data to validate it against. So maybe in the beginning, you can use a combination of your gut feeling and what the risk scoring algorithm says, but this means you will need eventually to iterate on that algorithm. So based on that, with that questionnaire that is filled by engineering teams, and ideally it automatically provides the risk score of this project, you can assess the risk of an upcoming project. And this allows you to work on a risk-based prioritization. You can start working on design reviews for high-risk projects, and depending on your capacity, you could move to more medium-risk ones. Now, this doesn't mean that for medium and low-risk ones, we offer nothing to our engineers. And this is where I think that security best practice documentation is a good start in this very early stage of a product security program. It can be used both for engineering training, but also as a material to point your engineers for projects that you will not be able to consult them as closely as you would like. And on that regard, it's sometimes difficult to see how you prioritize. There are so many things we want to educate our engineers on security best practices, and it's not always clear how to start. My suggestion is map one question, every question of the risk assessment questionnaire, map it to a security best practice document. And to go back to the example, if there is a question that says, are you using encryption? And they have said yes, there should be a security best practice document on how to implement encryption correctly. And that document needs to be short and actionable. And like those two are quite important, the short and the actionable. And the reason is that our engineers need information to make their implementation and their design more secure. It's possible that you will want to create a document that explains why encryption, when do we use encryption, and a bit more of a training material. But my suggestion is keep them separate and have at least one document that is, how do I do it securely? How do I design and how do I implement something securely? On the security testing tools, in this very early stage, it's very possible that there is no budget for commercial tools. This doesn't mean that you cannot roll out some security testing. Evaluate them very well before the integration. The fact that they are open source doesn't mean that rolling them out, teaching the engineers to use them and to make actions based on the findings doesn't mean that it has zero cost. On the contrary. Another thing is roll out security tools progressively. If you want to roll out many tools, roll them little by little. And also if you want to roll out just one tool, don't roll it out to the whole organization. Again, in both cases, the point is we don't want to overwhelm our engineers because they will not have the time to learn the new process, to learn the new tool, and take action on the findings. Another point is integrating into CI/CD, and especially for security testing tools like static analysis or software composition analysis like Sneak, you want to be able to add those security testing tools as a check in your PRs, because you don't have time for manual code reviews, especially in this very early stage. But those testing tools can be an automated security code review. The final thing, and I know it feels obvious, is don't roll out a security tool with high number of false positives. Doing that, you train your engineers that security testing tools do not give valuable results, and you train them to not really pay attention to them. So roll out tools that have a low number of false positives, or do the first trials to give to the rest of the engineers a clear state. Vulnerability management. I said in the beginning that during this first laying the foundations of a product security program, you will do some security testing on the existing product. And also we just said that we will launch out some security testing tools. In both cases, this means that we will have vulnerabilities. As a first step on creating a vulnerability management program, create something lightweight. It can be as lightweight as the diagram I have on the side. And something very important is to train your teams, the engineering, the product, and the security teams on this new process. Remember that vulnerability management is not a process owned only by security. It's a collaborative process between engineering, product, and security, and the success of it depends on all those teams. Finally, I know that we as security people, we like SLAs. If it's a high vulnerability, it needs to be fixed in X amount of days. But don't rush into creating strict SLAs if this is not feasible to be met. You are just rolling out a vulnerability management program. You're building the foundations for security product program. It's possible that SLAs will not be met. And putting strict SLAs from now, you're mentally training the rest of the organization that strict SLAs for security issues are not that strict. And you'll have heard me in the last couple of slides saying how you mentally train your engineers in the wrong direction if you do something and not the other. And this is where security culture comes into play. And every time you take a decision or to do or to not do something, keep in mind how this affects the security culture. And by security culture, I mean how I train the rest of the organization, the engineering and the product, to value security in the different processes that we roll out. So this is so far the first overview of laying down the foundations of a product security program. We have security training, minimal, with security best practice documentation. We do security design reviews for starting from high-risk projects and going down depending on our capacity. We launched some open source security testing tools, and we did some security testing on our existing product. And because we found vulnerabilities, we also created a vulnerability management process. On the next iteration, you can think that the product security team scales. You get more members and you get more resources. In that next phase, the goal is to expand on the different aspects of your program that you launched in the first iteration and start adding some structure. One thing that you may consider when you get more resources and you increase the number of engineers in your product security team is security partnerships. When I say security partner, it's a product security engineer that is assigned to a few engineering teams, and they become the security point of contact. Security partnerships have some great benefits, but also some drawbacks that you need to take into account before rolling out such a program. I cannot emphasize enough how great relationship it helps you build. You have security engineers working closely with engineering teams, and this really fosters a security culture, and it builds great relationships between security and engineering. Also, the whole organization has the confidence that we release features that are secure by design because we have a security engineer who also becomes the subject expert on that specific domain of the product. Now, on the other hand, if you roll out a security partnership program, you may see that some engineering teams can become too dependent on their security partner. And by too dependent, I mean that maybe they don't spend so much effort in learning some security processes that you are rolling out or some tooling. because they know that they have their security partner who will nudge them to the right direction. Also, maybe at some point in the growth of both the company and the product security team, maybe you have a good enough ratio so that one product security engineer can be assigned to a couple of engineering teams. As the company scales, this will not scale well, and this is the scaling issues I mentioned. And on that regard, I have a couple of options as alternatives, not alternatives, different forms of security partnerships. One is, instead of assigning security partners to all the teams, assign them only to teams that are working on high-risk parts of the product. Or another option is, instead of assigning security partners to projects, assign them to projects. For example, if you know that there is a new project coming up that will be, I don't know, a couple of quarters, this is a good time, and it's a high-risk one, this is a good time to assign a security partner for that project. And the second option, it helps because engineering teams cannot become too dependent because they get a security partner only for their project and not for the whole portfolio of their team. Moving forward from security partnerships, security champions. I said that security partnerships may have some scaling issues. Security champions is the solution to the scaling issues that you will face in your product security program. My suggestion is invest in a security champions program early. I know that when you start investing in such a program, you may not see immediately the return in this investment. And this is a reason that you may deprioritize this. My advice is don't do it. It needs time to train your engineers into becoming security champions. And further down the road, you will actually see the benefits of doing that. Give them a clear path. And my advice here is don't teach them into doing web security testing. Teach them things that are applicable to their job. And their job is how to design securely software and how to implement securely software. And on that regard, train them to do some product security work, because again, this is closer to what their actual job, designing and implementing secure software. And start assigning them some responsibilities so that the training is not theoretical, but they can start applying it. Design reviews. In the first iteration, I only mentioned that following a risk-based prioritization, you will do design reviews, you will do security reviews during design. I think now is a good time, after you've set those different practices of the security program throughout the structure we set. And in that regard, during design, I think we need to start moving on threat models. Because threat models train mentally your engineers in a very specific way in looking for threats. My suggestion is also create a template. It's you give consistent format to your engineers. They know what to expect, how to expect it, how it will look like. It helps understanding what are the threats when you have a specific threat model template. And as I said before, train your security champions to threat model. Have them shadow you in the beginning, or have them read your threat model and discuss with you how you approached it and so on. At some point, maybe they can do it with your consultation. Security testing tools. In the beginning, we didn't have budget and we rolled out some open source tooling. Maybe now it's a time to move to some commercial tools because this gives us some more rich features. I said it in the previous time we talked about security testing tools, but take time to evaluate those tools. When I say evaluate, it's not only about the quality of the findings. It's not only about the ratio of false positives. And to evaluate them well, come up with a list of requirements before you start the evaluation. And in that list, include things like tool management. Can I customize it? Can I extend it? Can I get metrics out of it? Does it integrate well with the workflow of my engineering teams? And so on. And one more thing to pay attention to is don't assess only the tool capabilities, but also the vendor relationship. The security testing tools vendors are not vendors. They are partners in our journey of making a product security program successful. Vulnerability management. I said in the first iteration, don't rush into creating strict SLAs, but we need to start putting some SLAs in place. So now it's a good time to start building a cadence of resolving vulnerabilities in time. You need to get some leadership buy-in for that, but always take a risk-based approach in your SLAs. And sometimes this means an SLA exception. An example of an SLA exception is the following. Let's say that there is a vulnerability that can be fixed within SLA in a very specific way. But there is also the possibility that instead of fixing this very specific vulnerability, the engineering team can build a more holistic solution that can harden the product on that regard. Maybe there is a good trade-off there to go a bit out of SLA to get that more holistic solution that is actually better for the security of the whole product. Another thing is build metrics around vulnerability management. What metrics each company will need is very dependent on the company needs, the security culture, and so on. But there is one metric that I find super important, which is metrics on the vulnerability types. Get a vulnerability taxonomy system. It can be the CWE, which is the Common Weakness Enumeration, or any other one that has a short list of vulnerability types and start assigning them to your vulnerabilities. What you get out of it is great metrics on where you do well and where not. For example, if you see after a while that you have too many vulnerabilities and sensitive data exposure, this is a very good data point, both for what kind of training you need to give to your engineers, but also where to focus your security testing capabilities. This is like a wrap up of phase 2 of a product security program. And of course, this is not just one iteration. There are multiple iterations to get to that maturity. But at some point, you will reach a mature product security program. And when I say mature, I mean that engineering and product know when and how to reach out to you. They know what are their responsibilities, what are the different touch points in the secure development life cycle. You have launched out tools. There is a vulnerability management process where SLAs are being adhered and so on. This will probably free up some time from the product security team that you can use to do some hardening now on application and services. It's time that in this time you can start engineering solutions to solve groups of vulnerabilities. I have some examples here, and they are only examples. You can work on hardening against XSS, or you can do an assessment on what is your current application logging and monitoring for different security events, and then see where there is room for improvements. Or the most hot topic of the last years is supply chain attack. How well is your organization in detecting them, in preventing them? What processes do you have around it, and how can you improve? Well, these are just examples, but depending on the metrics, actually, you go from your vulnerability management program, you will see where you need to focus your engineering solutions to start hardening the code and the product. This is mostly what I had to share. I have some closing remarks. The first one is work on a product security program iteratively. Don't focus on solving one aspect of the program while leaving the rest unstarted. And also, by the iterations, the more you work on the program, the more you realize how you need to improve. So this iteration comes a bit naturally. Another thing is there is no one-size-fits-all approach. What I share today is my lessons and what I learned from being in a specific company with a specific company security culture and so on. Take from that talk the things that may be applicable to the company you work for based on the security culture of that company. And I've mentioned security culture a lot, and I just want to reiterate. The company culture on security will affect your journey and will affect how successful the product security program is. So in every little detail, in every little decision, think how what you're doing actually improves the security culture of your company. How you train their whole organization that security is not only the security team's problem, but it's a problem of the whole organization. And actually, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's something. It's part of the engineering workflow. That's all I had to share. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm open for any questions, and this is some contact details.
Thank you, Eva. That was brilliant. It's very sort of hard won through experience.
Thank you.
To the viewers. Madhu Sudan said the Security Champions Initiative in the team, and then the Security Champions maintain the balance.
This is a great question. And again, you need great collaboration between engineering leadership and security leadership. There is no right solution. Again, it depends on your company. But I think if you can get a buy-in from engineering and security leadership that X amount of hours per week are assigned to security tasks, this is sometimes it will be less or sometimes it will be more. But if on the leadership level you get an agreement, I don't know, 3 hours per week or something like that, their security champions are entitled to work on security features. This will help because usually the problem is security wants security champions to do more security, and engineering wants their engineers to actually do feature development. So I think the most important is having an agreement on what is the balance there. And what it is, the number, it depends on the company.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, isn't it? Where do you draw the line about, I mean, we've had other speakers today talk about, not trying to solve absolutely every security problem because it's impossible, right? The only completely secure software that, is one that actually probably has no code in it. So, it's deciding those things are always about risk versus resource, aren't they?
Exactly. Yes.
I think that was the only question on talk. So
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Eva.
Thank you.
I don't know what's going on with your audio. Sounds terrible to me. Maybe is it just me?
No, I also have some issues.
Yes.
Okay.
It sounds like you're in slow motion at the minute. Perhaps try disconnecting the audio and reconnecting again. So thank you very much for joining us anyway, Eva. That was a really good talk. I very much enjoyed it. Hopefully you'll stick around for the remainder of the content today.
Yes, thank you for having me here. I really enjoyed it.
Pleasure.